Hi, everybody. It's Mike from Here the Watchmen. And tonight I'm excited to have on our show Nim from the Sharpening Report. He's a young guy who's just doing an incredible job of spreading the word, doing some phenomenal interviews. I suggest you go and visit his show and watch his show and all. We're going to get into how you can find it and all that here in a few minutes. Sam, thank you for joining us.
Hey, it's good to be back, Mike. I really appreciate you having me on the show again.
So, Sam, talk to me a little bit about the show and what directions you've been going in, and maybe touch on a particular interview that really resonated with you.
Yeah, well, it's been a lot of fun to be able to do the show, and I must say I commend you for doing a live show. I did my first live show over New Year's, and it didn't go off without a hitch. I'll say that. There was a couple issues, but we fought through it. I much prefer pre-recorded shows where I can make all the mistakes I want and edit it out later. But yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun. Like I said, I've been really just trying to focus on the lighter side of our world. There's a lot of shows out there that are focusing on the doom and gloom or just being really serious about it. And that's really good, is to be serious about these topics, but there needs to be some balance. So I'm trying to offer some of that balance. We talk about really important topics and we're serious when we need to, but I mean, I had my last show, I had Stephen Menking on. We talked about cryptocurrency. And in the beginning, we started with like a little skit that was just fun. And it was just a good time for a laugh. So I always want to bring some laughter into the topics and the ideas that we discuss, but also ultimately providing some valuable content for people to enjoy. But I want to be a little entertaining at least too.
Well, that's great because, Mark Taylor, Mark, he brings that up. Jeannie, my wife, had a phone conversation with him where she was talking about all the darkness that's out there, all the stories, and he said, "Don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to the hope found within the Bible, and pay attention to the good news, not necessarily all this bad news." Now, a lot of millennials, and we have a program, folks, called Millennials Matter, which we're trying to raise money to bring millennials to the Hear the Watchmen Conference, which is coming up quickly here, March 22nd through the 25th in Dallas, Texas. Sam, tell me, what is going on with the millennials? Are they hungry right now?
That's the thing about millennials is once you give them truth, they will fight tooth and nail for it. You can see that with all of the movements in the millennial world. They feel like they know what justice is and they won't rest until they get it. Ultimately, a larger majority of them are deceived. So they're not fighting for the right causes. But once you get them fighting for the right cause and they're really striving for truth. And I think one advantage that millennials have over the older generation is they haven't been hammered with the lies constantly over and over and over. So you can present them with certain facts and they're more open-minded about different things. You could talk, you could just talk about like things like 9/11 or aliens or things like that. And they're more intrigued because they haven't been fed a lie consistently. And that's one aspect. That's another reason I'm really trying to be more positive about things, is because frankly, millennials don't want to hear that the world's going to end in 10 years, because that means I don't get to live a life, right? And so when I hear that message, I kind of shut down. Or there's no messages with no hope. I'm just like, well, okay, I mean, you can think that, but I'm going to go out and try to change the world. And that's the mentality that a lot of millennials have, including myself. So I try to feed that the excitement for change and actually feed them truth to get them really pumped up about serving the Lord ultimately, but changing, even if they're not Christians, then still changing the world for the good. But yeah, I think ultimately millennials are in a perilous state for sure. A lot of people have written them off as a group of people that won't be able to help our society, that's already lost and so far gone. But I'm not ready to give up on them yet. And I know a lot of people my age are really fighting and are awake and know what's going on in the world. So I don't think that we should give up on them. And so I was really excited when you said you were on board with the idea to offer a scholarship and try to get people to Hear the Watchmen, because I went to the last Hear the Watchmen conference, and I think my group, me and 3 friends, were the only people under 27 years old, I think, for the whole conference. So I'm excited to get more people there. So yeah, we're trying to raise money, but on the flip side, we're also still looking for applications of people who want to go to Hear the Watchmen and they're 29 years old or younger. So if you're interested in that, definitely head over to sharpeningreport.com and hit on the Millennials Matter tab and send an application. And I'm looking through them and trying to pick the people who, I guess, I don't know. I'm just trying to find the right people that God wants to go to the show or go to hear the Watchmen Conference.
Well, that's wonderful. And we really appreciate you doing that, Sam. Now, where are the millennials gathering today? Are they going to the mainstream churches, or are they shying away from that?
It's interesting. It's hard to say, obviously the mainstream church is not doing a good job. Is their idea is they're trying to get the millennials just as much as everyone else is. It's just as much as Satan's trying to get them, just as much as the witches, just as much as we're trying to reach them. But the mainstream church's mentality is, oh, I'm going to play all these cool hip songs and incorporate worldly things and to try to attract more people, which ultimately is just putting your light under a bowl. So yeah, the millennials aren't really digging that too much. They're kind of jumping ship, and they're like, they want something authentic. And that's the thing. I mean, they want that truth. They want that reality. And they can turn to things like witchcraft, which is the statistics on witchcraft is going through the roof as people are turning, because ultimately that is real. You can see fruit from that. It's bad fruit, of course, but you can see the reality of it. So they turn and they start doing these spells, and then they're like, well, this is real, but this mainstream church over here was just offering me these feel-good piece of crap messages. And so it's about actually offering something. So yeah, I would say a majority of them are leaving the church. There are still some in the church. And that's something I get kind of frustrated at too, is people love to hate on the church, the mainstream church, and love to abandon it because it's, frankly, I mean, you get tied up with the 501c3. It is down a dangerous road, but I think that's a good opportunity for us to try to infiltrate the modern church and try to get it back to actually focusing on truth, and then effectively being able to reach those millennials. Because as I'm sure in the fringe ministry, there's not a lot of resources available to try to reach those people, and the mainstream church, they have a lot of resources because people are willing to donate to those things. So I think a wise step would be to try to correct the church instead of just abandon it. I know it's a tall task, but yeah.
Well, I mean, it appears to me, being way past a millennial, that's like in my rearview mirror, quite a way. And being where I am to now, but watching the millennials out there, they seem to be at a point where they're open to exposing the witchcraft, and they're so tech savvy. It's I mean, do you find that to be true, that they're not really as afraid as some of the other people are?
Ultimately, I think they've been a lot of them have been brainwashed to think that things like witchcraft is okay. And like postmodernism, that's the whole idea behind postmodernism, is do what thou wilt, essentially, is everything's okay. It doesn't matter. So yeah, I don't think they see a problem with identifying it. The problem is, I don't think they don't see a problem with it at all. So you have to be able to identify it, which is great. But then they say, well, it's still good, still okay. So I think there needs to be a little bit more arming and a little bit more waking up to realize what is bad. You have things like Hollywood constantly pushing the ideas of witchcraft onto students. I mean, whether you like Harry Potter or not, the idea is it normalizes witchcrafts to students, and people want to live in that world, and it looks so great. And a lot of those aspects are real behind witchcraft. So you have to be careful when you dive into that world. So yeah, I think they're definitely exposing it, but the issue is not putting it in a negative light.
Yeah, and I think you're dead on there. Now, you attended as a young person to hear the Watchmen Conferences. What did you feel when you were in the room?
Yeah, well, we talked about this a little bit last time I was on. It's just one of those times where you go through your daily life, and a lot of times you feel pretty secluded because you want to talk about these new ideas that you're discussing, and you don't even want to necessarily try to change anyone's mind, but you just want to engage in meaningful conversation with someone else who has an open mind. And they don't have to agree with you. You just want that open-mindedness, and you try to talk to either if it's your family or friends, and they don't want to hear about the satanic agenda in Hollywood, or they don't want to hear about the potential hollow earth theory because it just sounds crazy to them, right? And that was the first thing I noticed, is I was just walking around, kind of getting it, feeling the atmosphere. And you could just like hear people behind me like talking about the Hollow Earth in a very just basic idea. Does this exist? Let's talk about it. You know, you have L.A. Marzulli talking about aliens in a very practical sense, and it just was a group of people coming together to have that open mind and just a desire to find truth. And you could feel that unity throughout the whole conference.
Well, you know, Sam, let me ask you a question. This is a pertinent question. What materials do you think that millennials would like to have? What kind of materials would they want to pick up at a conference like this?
That's a good question. Things that apply to their life directly. That's what I would say. And of course, everything that we talk about applies to their life directly. But like I said before, a lot of times things are put in a light of doom and gloom and it's lost hope, but here's some information. I think the thing about millennials is there needs to be hope. There needs to be a common goal to work for. There needs to be an aspect of change to be achieved. And so giving products that will has an end goal to it where we can work together as a common group to try to reach it. I think that's what millennials really strive for. They're open to most topics. They're open to discussing all sorts of things, but it needs to be in that light of hope. And I mean, that's what the Bible is. It has a ton of facts, and at the end, it's hope filled. It's Jesus coming back, and we get to spend eternity with him. And so I think that's a common aspect of our DNA, is we need to have that hope. And so I think that every person that you bring to the Watchmen, they have such valuable things to say, and to have that hope tacked on the end of it, I think would drive a lot of people there. And ultimately, a lot of millennials are pretty snobby, so having that production value also is very important. It's just one of those things. I don't know how you work around it, but they're kind of snobby, to be fair.
Well, I can tell you, Jeannie's son was up for Christmas, and he was explaining to us how to trade Bitcoin and all the other cryptocurrencies. And I mean, the internet speed was not quite up to what he's used to in Los Angeles, up here in the mountains. And man, he noticed it immediately. So you're right. The presentation has to be dead on. You can get the message to. Now, Sam, how do our listeners tonight find you? How do they get in touch with you? What nights does your show air? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I have a website called sharpeningreport.com. Again, that's where you can fill out the application for the Millennials Matter Scholarship. But ultimately, my main platform right now is YouTube. You can go to youtube.com/The Sharpening Report. Also, I'm on Blog Talk Radio for those who don't need the video. So you can find that as well. And I have an email address. If you guys ever have any questions on, if you're a millennial and you're hearing this, and you want to be unified with other millennials, then you can send me an email at sharpeningreport.com or sharpeningreport@gmail.com. And I do my best to respond to all of the emails I get. I'm not a super huge program yet, so I have a little bit more of a personal touch than some other guys do.
I think, listen, brother, I think you've got a great show, and we're going to do everything we can to promote your show at Here the Watchmen in Dallas, Texas, and get you some exposure. I'm hoping you'll bring your computer with you so you can actually interview guests there, our speakers, and some of the attendees, to really let people know what you're all about. It's that we're trying to do with Millennial Matters. So I look forward to seeing you there just here in about 70 some days. We'll be there and ready, and just whole bunch of millennials. So Sam, thank you so much for joining me tonight on this edition of the Watchmen Report.
I appreciate you having me. It's always a joy to come on.
We'll see you shortly. Dallas, Texas, folks, March 22nd through the 26th at the Hilton W Executive Lakes Conference Center and Hotel. So we'll see you there March 22nd through the 25th, Dallas, Texas. Don't miss out. Go to HearTheWatchmen.com and get your tickets there. The promo code Use Dallas20 as a promo code, and you'll save $20 per ticket. So we're looking forward to seeing you all there. Wonderful, blessed evening, and we'll see you next time here on the Watchmen's Report.